On this week's episode of the Digital Marketing Scoop, I'm going to be talking about tips to help you run and launch a successful podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Digital Marketing Scoop. So this week we're going to be talking about tips to successfully start up and run your own podcast. So before we kind of jump into the tips, I suppose the first thing to kind of be aware of is, who are you starting this podcast for? Is it yourself? Is it just something fun that you want to do? Do you want to build your brand? I always say there's three things you need to do with a podcast, or at least one of these three things. You need to help, educate, or entertain your audience. So with our podcast here, for example, we try and help. We try and give out good information around digital marketing that's going to help people. In turn, that helps us establish us as experts in the industry, and it helps us build our brand. But it's really important. I think you kind of have to hit one of those. Am I going to help people? Am I going to give them information? Am I going to be in the educational space, educating people about particular topics? Or am I going to be entertaining people, comedy, whatever it might be, storytelling? They're kind of really, I think, the three things. Once you hit one of those, you're onto a winner. So think about your audience, and think about, are you going to hit one of those for your audience? And if you are, I think you're going to be off to a really, really good start. And the second thing is, don't fuss over the little things. I talk to a lot of people and they're thinking about starting a podcast, but like, I don't have the right equipment, or I don't have this, I don't have that. You can literally start a podcast with your phone. There's an app called Anchor.fm. Download it. It's a great way to get started. Over time, as you build up, if you want to get more fancy, you can get a little microphone off Amazon to plug into your phone, especially if you have guests. Set that up on a little stand in front of you and your guests talking into that mic. It really is all about the content. The saying goes, content is king. Obviously, over time, you want your production values to improve. You want the quality of your audio to improve, and that will happen. But the key really is to actually get started. A podcast is such a great way to build your brand and to build a community around your brand. So the most important thing to do really is to get started. So if what's stopping you from getting started is something like, the quality, the audio, the equipment, just do it. Just go for it. Just get that first few episodes done. And I'm sure you'll get fantastic feedback on them. And from there you can grow. So the next thing, and this really, really is the key, it is be consistent. I think the average podcast gets to episode 14 and then that's it. You have to be so consistent. If you're a weekly podcast, you are putting podcasts out every single week. You might hit one episode, one topic, all of a sudden you have a massive jump in growth. Maybe that one was going to be on week 15. You just have to be consistent. As long as you're doing that, as long as you're help educating or entertaining your audience, just be consistent. They're going to expect you there every week or every second week, whatever kind of time period you decide to do your podcast in. But the key really is consistency. If you drop off for a couple of months and then you come back, you're potentially going to lose a lot of your audience. And obviously, the more consistent you are and the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it, the easier it's going to get. Just for example, here today, we're recording 3 podcasts in one go. So that's going to be 3 weeks of content. So as you get used to it, it will really become an awful lot easier for you to do things like that. Or if you have guests, have 2 or 3 of the guests come in on the same day after one another. That way now you have 3 episodes all lined up for the next 3 weeks. So plan it out. But the key really is consistency. Because as soon as you stop being consistent, that's when it's like, I might do an episode here, I might do an episode there, and it really doesn't work that way. You have to really be on point and consistent with your episodes. Another good tip, in fact, not a tip, this is like one of the keys, is to repurpose your podcast content. So your podcast might be 5, 10, 15, 20, 3 hours long. social media is how you're going to drive an awful lot of people to your podcast. You want to pull out the clips that are going to grab people's attention and post those to social media and drive those people to your podcast. So whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it might be, and drive them to subscribe from there. So take your clips, grab them with the clips you feel are going to be the most attention grabbing, and use those clips to drive them to your podcast platform. And the last tip is have fun. The podcast, it should be fun doing a podcast. It's fun to see the growth. It's fun to talk to people. It's a great way to network because when you're reaching out to people to come on your podcast, those are people you may never have been able to get in contact with before. But when you're inviting them to come onto a podcast, now all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I'd love to do that. So it's a great way to be able to network for your business as well, or for your personal brand, or for whatever reason you're doing the podcast. But yeah, have fun with it. But it really is, I would say, the one major thing, if you can take away from this episode, is you have to be consistent. As I say, the average podcast, 14 episodes it gets to. It's, the growth is, compounds over time. It's the further and further you get on the episodes, the more and more it grows. So you just have to stick with it. You have to be consistent. And one of the great ways to keep that consistency is to make it fun. Bring on interesting guests that you like to talk with. Talk about topics you love to talk with. And that should be a reason that you're doing a podcast anyway. As I say, it's got to fall into the help, educate, or entertain. So you've kind of got to love what you're talking about to keep that consistency. So as I say, if you only take one thing away from this episode, is you have to be consistent with your podcast episodes. And the other thing, just do it. Don't worry about the equipment. Don't worry. There's really no barrier to entry here. Start off with your phone and grow from there. If you've got something interesting to say, if you potentially can talk to interesting people, tell interesting stories, help educate or entertain, then why not? You should be starting a podcast. It's a great way to build your own personal brand or to build your business's brand. Thanks for listening. That's this week's episode of the Digital Marketing Scoop. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of the Digital Marketing Scoop. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't subscribed yet, please jump into your Apple Podcasts, your Google Podcasts, Spotify, whatever your favorite podcast platform is, and just make sure to follow and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to leave a review if you enjoyed the episode, I'd absolutely love for you to do that. We put out an episode every single week with digital marketing tips, case studies, ways to build your business with digital marketing. Also, if you are interested in bringing your own business online or looking at scaling your business, we'd love to chat with you here at CLIQ. You can visit us online at CLIQ.ie.